So we're here to talk about PHMPs. And I'm sure the fact that you're here, you might have some questions or some concerns, or you think there's opportunities in that space. So that's what we'll look to cover off. That's why I'm keen to hear what questions people have, because it's a pretty broad concept. And I think there's certainly opportunities for improvement. In the work that I've been doing, I've seen good ones. I've seen very not good ones. I've seen missing ones, and where do we end up in the mix of that? So again, if you've been on webinars, you know this. How are you going to take notes? If you want to take notes, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to get a copy of the replay and also a copy of the slides. You don't have to get too distressed about that, but if you can, just remove any distractions. I'm going to go hard for about 40 minutes of content, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So if you can, just turn your phone over and things like that. So first question, if people on the line have done some work or familiar with PHMPs, if a frontline worker said to you, "What's a PHMP?" What's your response? What's your one-liner? What's your one sentence that hopefully articulates what a PHMP is? So I'll give 30 seconds. Throw some stuff in the chat. Really keen to hear what people have to share, because I'm always interested in learning as well. So that's the question. How would you, in one sentence, describe what a PHMP is? And we'll see who wants to go first. There's no right or wrong. This helps us understand. So Leslie, management and control of risks. Yep, Sharon, thank you. The hazards that can cause multiple fatalities. Yep. Tamara, how do we manage our principal hazards, those risks that could result in multiple fatality or legislated? Okay, so we can see there's some flavors here around ideally, well, I won't say ideally, most often around multiple fatality risks. And there's a legislative component. Justin, good to see you, mate. Plan to manage principal hazard is, cause multiple fatalities. Yep. Pat, strategic view of managing risk. Thank you. Has anyone else got something in there before we keep moving forwards? This just helps us all get on the same page as well. Make sure no one's in the waiting room. No, we're all good. Okay. So no right or wrong. Again, so I've just stolen a definition. Mick, one-stop shop to articulate what the critical risk is, critical controls, and what documents articulate how we manage those risks, including TARPs. Yeah, I like that. See this, who I think is Christine, potentially cause multiple fatalities. Awesome. Thank you. So we're away. We're using the chat function. So look, I've stolen this description or definition from New South Wales. They've got a bit of a help guide. I think it was 2022. So not that long ago, where they've articulated it. So I guess if I was going to answer the one-liner, it's very similar to what you've mentioned, Mick. So it's the document that is the starting point that talks about how do we manage this, generally a multiple fatality risk. And we'll talk about what might live within that document that can help us do that a little bit later. And so, yes, most often for multiple fatality risks, most of the mining legislation across Australia, I'm not sure internationally, don't know if anyone's got any insights on that, but certainly off Australia, there's the idea of principal hazards, which generally are multiple fatality safety risks. And therefore, we end up having PHMPs, short term for multiple fatality risks. And there's other documents we can have for single fatality as well, which can look very similar if we wanted to do that. So any examples? Who's got one in their management system? What's an example PHMP? Who can give me a title that they've got or they've seen of a PHMP? Anyone want to just throw something in the chat? Awesome. Mick and Justin both at the same time. So geotechnical. So the idea of strata failure, be it surface or underground, we might have, which could cause multiple fatalities. We'll have a principal hazard management plan in place for that. Awesome. So vehicle interaction as well. Thanks, Sharon. Although I hate that term when I think through critical risk, but I understand what that's pointing to. Hate's a strong word. So where are we with principal hazard management plan? So is there a problem with them? If there is, what's the nature of the problem? And I shared at the start, what I see is I've seen PHMPs that are, gosh, 30, 60 plus pages long. I've seen PHMPs that are like a one pager. I've seen everything in between that in terms of duration. I see PHMPs that don't talk about a whole host of things. Seen PHMPs that talk about way too many things. And I've seen PHMPs, so they've been great documents, but no one knows about them. And they're just sitting on the shelf. And I wonder if some of that's, familiar. So how do we know that? I mean, I see that day in, day out. There's always opportunities with the clients that we work with to, I'm going to use the term, and I'm going to steal this from Jim Joy and Gary Marling, right size PHMPs. And so my promise today is I'm going to go through some ideas and some concepts that I believe if your organization embarks upon, then will help get you to that point of right size value adding PHMPs. And hopefully that's why you're here. So about me, for those that I haven't yet met in person or online. So I've been in mining safety now for 25 years, almost 25 years. Do a lot of work in general health and safety, got a consultancy business, and for the last 6 years, I've honed in on critical risks. So single, multiple fatality prevention, critical controls, all of that, including safety and health management systems, and PHMPs obviously falls into that. So worked across a number of players, and what we'll talk to today is certainly an aggregation of the learnings of doing that practical application. A few of you have seen this before. So another reason why I'm recording is my arm comes out when I'm trying to think about what to say or reflect upon what people have said, and said to my daughter that it's 5 push-ups per arm. I'm working on it, but it still slips out. PHMP, set of principal hazard management plans, talking about the same thing, going to move fast, and certainly I don't like it to be a one-way dialogue. Well, one-way monologue. I like to have it as a conversation. So there'll be plenty of times where I'm going to ask you some questions and throw some stuff in the chat as well. So what the structure looks like, I'm going to cover off some of these principles. We're going to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And thank you for those who've already put some stuff in the chat around the question. So we can loop back on that, and I'll talk about what you can do to get some further help in and around this space if you need it. And so I'll talk about how you can get access to all of the slides and recordings, and I think I might share a bit of a free bonus in there too. So let's jump into the first idea here around clarity. So what is the role of the principal hazard management plan? Where does it sit? So I wonder if anyone on the line, and I've seen these, if you went to your PHMP library, are they like this? You're pulling out War and Peace, or even Fall. Are they done, but they were done like 10 years ago and really haven't had a refresh, and they're out of date? And here's some examples of some of the pain points I've seen. Apologize if my internet's a little bit quirky. I'm hotspotting at the moment because Mr. Telstra here is fixing our internet. No one reads them. If something went wrong, could there be a compliance exposure as well? Now, I've seen that classic where we'll do a review of a principal hazard management plan with key people, and they'll say to me, I never even knew that was written. Didn't even know that was in there. And they've also said out loud, I'm glad something didn't happen because we don't do that. And I wonder, if you're familiar with that. And where we want to be is the flip side of that, don't we? We want to have succinct PHMPs. The content is on point, it adds value, and therefore people read them and value them. So here's another question for the group. Pretty easy. Do principal hazard management plans describe what will be done, or how it will be done, or does it do both? So no right or wrong. What do people think? 1 or 3 choices. Is it the what, is it the how, or is it both? Let's just go around the grounds and see what people think. Just throw something in the chat. Is it the what, the how, or both?
Yeah, it'll be from Speaking from Granny Smith Mine, bunch of geotechs in the room. We'll say both.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for jumping in there. Welcome everyone in Granny Smith. Hopefully the weather's all right. So Justin's gone the what? Yep. What do other people think? We've got a few people on the line. Is it the what, the how, or both? Margot, thank you. Gone what? What do some other people think there? I have to work out who's on the line so I can see who to pick on. Who else? We got Tamara, Sharon, Sapna. What do you guys think? Leslie, Kim, it's good you've renamed yourself so I can pick on people. Awesome, Sharon, thank you. Bob's gone both. Sharon's gone the what? Sapna both. Mick, generally what stops containing the how. Thanks, Mick. Anyone else want to throw anything in there? Vincent or Tanya? Thank you. All right. Vincent's gone the what? Okay. And I'll just let Sarah in as well. Tamara's gone both. Yes, so I guess this in part comes back to the structure of PHMP. So it's almost like, so start again, Christian. What I've seen that works well is they describe the what, and I think Mick said, then they clearly link to the how. And I'll go through and unpack a little bit more on how you might be able to go through about this. So what we don't want to have is we don't want to have in the PHMP, we talk about this is how we're going to manage the risk and a bit about how we're going to do it. So we're going to go out and check this, and we're going to do this, and this role is going to do this. And then at the same time, we might have an SOP or a work instruction or some other document that also talks about the how. We're going to do this, we're going to check that, someone's going to go out and do this. So one, we want to avoid duplication. And even worse, we actually want to avoid conflicting information. And if we take that, and I guess I use the idea that a PHMP is like the center of an octopus. It's the starting point. And then once I come into this document that says how we're going to manage, what we're doing to manage the risk, it will then feed me out or link me to all of the stuff that goes around managing this principal hazard. So we said geotech. We know there's a whole host of systems and processes and training and emergency response stuff that go in and around doing that. So hopefully this is landing. So what I've got here is an example of, on the outside, is what could be some content or parts of the principal hazard management document. So let's say the starting point, then through which it might have a parent statement and said, okay, so for emergency response for a geotechnical risk, we're going to cover off these particular consequences. To see how we do this, now go and look at, it could be the emergency response plan. It could be the geotechnical checklist. It could be whatever it is. That's where we go and talk about how we do that emergency response for geotech as an example. If you do have a question, please throw it in the chat and we can keep looping back with that. We want to keep moving. Hopefully this is landing as an idea. So where do PHMPs live in your hierarchy of documents? So we know we've got PHMPs, we've got SOPs, we've got management plans, we've got forms, standards, guidelines. What do people think? So we've got Mick up the top. What do other people think? Tamara, under the policy. Yep, so almost, yep. So policy statement's probably the thing that says this is our view of the world. Sapna, along with the standards. Thank you. Anyone else? What do other people think? Sharon, thank you. Under their own title, PHMPs at the top. Yep. Jess, management plan, standard level. Thank you, Jess. Not sure which Jess that is. And yep, Pat, you go on there. Standard. And yeah, please keep throwing some stuff in the chat. So this is, again, generic on the right-hand side, triangle that kind of shows, well, we've got less of these things at the top and then more of these things down the bottom. Glenn, under mine safety standards. Yep. Thank you, mate. And then showing what a generic document type list could be and where potentially PHMPs might sit within that hierarchy. So if we think the idea that the PHMP is the center of the octopus, then generally it's up here, isn't it? And then it's linking out and downwards. Might link upwards in certain occasions. For example, if we had a corporate standard for something around that, it could link upwards, but generally it's a linking out and down or across. Because certainly you could link PHMPs across to each other as well if we wanted to. So this is, generally where we'd see it. And I'll talk about a little bit later what this means from a risk management process. And I haven't thrown in things here like the other things that I know businesses might have, which is standards, guidelines, might have procedures, might have other document types as well, and they might list in here. The messaging is where might it sit on a generically, which you can then cross-reference back to your own system to understand, well, where do they live? Are they at the right level? Justin, where do you see standards sit in this hierarchy? I will address that now because it's on this slide. Mate, I'd need to understand what's in the standard because I've seen standards done differently. So it's kind of, it depends. So I've seen standards as an example live at a SOP level, almost like a how to do something, and an organization's called that a standard. Where I've seen other businesses, let's say group standards. So what, Glencore has their fatal risk standards, which is a list of requirements as an example, and they might live, corporately, there could be a parallel SHMS architecture, or if whatever the site, if we thought at a site level, if they had a minimum criteria for a list of controls, as an example, it might live somewhere up here. It might live beside, a little bit below, because then the other part of that, which is what a lot of organizations miss, not getting on my soapbox, well, what risk assessment document informs that standard? Did it come from Iraq? Did it come from a Bowtie? Did it come from something else? Because that can also help us understand where a standard might live. Happy to riff off that a little bit later, mate. Hopefully that helps. Yes. All right. So everyone can answer this. All right. I'll read your comment. So provide a rating of 1 to 10 on where your organization's PHMP, well, does it describe the what and not the how? And are they the center of the octopus applying that methodology? So we've got 21 people on the line, well, including myself and an AI note taker. So let's say 19. So just give yourself a rating out of 1 to 10. There should be almost 19 responses. 10 is obviously gold standard, nothing to see here. We're all shiny and new. And 1 is, look, we probably got a fair journey ahead of us. So thank you for those who go on first. Justin, got your comment, mate. So Tamara's a 6, Mick's a 6, Justin. Right, you guys middle of the pack. All right, who else? Jess, you're going 6 to 7. Sarah's a 7. Sharon's a 7. Vincent's a 5. Yep. Bob 2 to 3. Yep. That's good. I don't let 0.5s in our rating. Satin a 2. Thanks, mate. All right, who else have we got here? Colin, Daniel. Oh yeah, you got me, Colin. Good on you. 7. That's pretty good. What else? Tenya, Vincent. I think Subas. Don't have PHP non-mining again. No worries. Margot, that's right. You can do a little NA. I think that's a lot of the people on the line. Thank you, everyone. So look, to round this bit out, Leslie, non-mine as well. Yeah, too easy. So we've talked about, we know there's negative impacts if the PHMPs are war and peace, if no one reading them. And we talked about the idea that it's the center of the octopus. So it talks about what will be done, what the risk is, what we'll do, and then links out to the how. That's how we can start to follow this process of right sizing it. And then the question is, okay, if you were to embark on that process and achieve that, what sort of impact would it make to your business? Would you be in the situation where the value add, they're not exposing people to compliance risks, which I expanded upon, and people read them, and they're a nice fit. So if it would make an impact, and you think that there's a fair bit of work ahead, then the question is, will your organisation commit to doing that, or just leave things as they are? So rounding out that concept. As I just said, describe the what, not the how, and think about them being the center of the octopus. Who's that? Glenn, you gave us 5. Thanks, mate. Okay. So this then leads us on to another idea. What role do risk assessments play in relation to PHMPs? So that's why I've got this question here. Before, after, never, are they integrated, aligned or not? What do people think? Who wants to be brave and throw something in the chat? Is there a relationship between PHMPs and the risk management process? If there is, what does that look like? All right, Margot, even non-mining, thank you. So we do them after a risk assessment, yes. Jess, risk assessment before. Pat, they are an output. Yep. Anyone else got some ideas or inputs around this? How they relate to? Tomorrow, risk assessment identify what are the principal hazards. Yep. So we can do one that says what are our principal hazards, and then we might do a subsequent one. Thank you, Mick. Link to broad brush identifies what the principal hazards are. Yep. And interestingly, which I won't just today, potentially is there a circular relationship between the PHMPs and risk assessment process as well, which is we won't unpack that one today. So I've come across this. I wonder if you come across this, or this might even be pretty close to home, that we have a PHMP that has no reference to a risk assessment. I'll look at it and say, well, how did you come up with this? Was it a risk-based process? And they'll be like, no, we just wrote the requirements. Bob Hayes, critical risk. Yes, thanks, mate. Or is there some conflict? So our risk assessment says, hey, here's all the stuff. Here's our list of control strategies or control mechanisms. And they go and read the PHMP, and it doesn't actually say the same thing. It's missing that stuff. Or even worse, it actually says something different. Risk assessment says we're going to do this, X, Y, Z. PHMP says, no, actually we do, A, B, C. Or sometimes we'll see that we might say, look, yes, we have a PHMP linked to the risk assessment, but I look at the review cycles and they're completely different. So we did we just reviewed the PHMP last week, and the last time we reviewed the risk assessment was 3 years ago, which obviously points to that, we've got some challenges in that space. Margo, I'll come back to that. And Leslie, I'll come back to that one a little bit later. Some good questions. So where we want to be is the opposite of that. Yep. There's a neat relationship between a risk assessment on that principal hazard and PHMP. Contents aligns, congruent, and they're looked at the same time. Kind of makes sense, like you would do for an operational document, wouldn't it? So yeah, if we think about the PHMP describes what it is, whatever the principal hazard is and how we manage it, then there must be a risk assessment that flows into it. And like people have said, prior to or at the time of completion, but certainly if we don't do it the other way around, although I have seen that done, you can do then a cross-reference to the post PHMP completion with a risk assessment, but that's not ideal. All right, so if we could think of our different risk assessment tools, and people that are non-mining, you may know of this tool type or not. There's lots of different risk assessment types. If we could choose one, what would be the optimal risk assessment type that would flow into a principal hazard management plan? Anyone want to guess? Or maybe you've already used something that you think works really well. Sharon's gone a Bowtie. Margot's gone a BBRA. With the BBRA, there's kind of two parts of that. So one, the BBRA will tell us what are our principal hazards. So I said, yes, look, a principal hazard is Geotech, therefore we must have a Geotech principal hazard management plan. Then in addition to the BBRA, we need another risk assessment that actually takes strata as an example, and we unpack strata. So who wants to have a guess? We've got Bowtie, BBRA. Does anyone else want to throw something out there? Another risk assessment tool? Or it might be one that's already mentioned. Colin, Bowtie. Margo, you go on BBR and RAC. Glenn, detailed risk assessment. Leslie guessing Bowtie. Jess, Bowtie for that critical risk hazard. Yeah, Bowtie. We use a RAC, Justin. So yeah, there certainly isn't I'm not saying there's an absolute rule, and I don't think it's legislated what type you do. This is a little bit busy. I'll walk through this, but long story short, from the work that we've been doing, the optimal type of risk assessment that can flow into a PHMP is a Bowtie analysis. But you can do RAC and still have a good outcome. So what we have here, I guess this is if you think about the different risks you'd have within your business, we'd have critical risks, let's say multi-fatality risks, or we might have one of our principal hazards could be a tailings dam failure. Or we might have a principal hazard management plan for a tailings dam failure. So, those big showstopper risks. Then we've got single fatality risks and then permanent injury and reversible. And then if I was going to come into an organization, well, through an SHMS lens, and then we'll hone in on PHMPs, I'd be looking for, okay, well, at these different levels, generally these are the types of risk assessment tools we might use. So like we said, broad brush risk assessment will help us identify what are our potentially multi-fatality risks and single fatality risks. And then we might then have a bow tie that is what we use for each of those critical risks. So we will have a bow tie on tailings dam failure, have a bow tie on strata failure, we'll have a bow tie on vehicle interaction, let's call it loss of control of a vehicle. And then I'd expect there to be a principal hazard management plan, and there's a one-to-one relationship. And sometimes we'll, just by looking through the SHMS and say, okay, here's your principal hazard management plan, where's the risk assessment, where's the one-to-one? Oftentimes we'll find some gaps. And organizations have kind of tried to do a bit of we did this generic thing over here, can't I just point it that way? And look, you can, but I feel like you lose a lot of value add by not having a one-to-one relationship. Sometimes, it might make sense, let's say if an organization, had, no, I won't do that. I won't confuse people. Let's just keep it simple. So picture here on the right is an example of the content structure for a PHMP. I'm not saying this is the way or the only way, just as an example that we've used. You can start to see when you look at the titles, the section titles, how it loops back to that idea of being the center of the octopus. So even though we'll have these as headings, we'll talk a little bit about the what, and then we might link out to the how. And then a bit of a note here on hazard descriptions. Why did I put that in there? So hazard descriptions. I'm not going to unpack that one now. I don't want to confuse people. Might loop back to that at the end. All right, so taking this one step lower. What I've got here in this table is showing, okay, if we did a bow tie analysis, a bow tie analysis consists of all of these steps or stages or parts. And then on the right-hand side in this table, we can see how those PHMP parts can map and align to these different bow tie analysis parts. So this is where, once I unpack this is where I can see there's a good fit of bow tie to racks, because racks generally aren't a great tool to help identify critical controls, as an example. And now we know in Queensland mining that we need to identify critical controls. And then we will have a section within our PHMP around critical control management. And potentially we even list out what are our 4 or 5 critical controls for our risk, for example, strata. And then we'll then push the reader, over to our critical control management system, where they can go and get the information on how do we manage those 5 controls, as an example. So I'm not going to read through this table. Again, you can get the slides, read this at your leisure. But we can see here, and actually this is one I think when I was talking about the hazard description. So what bow ties, or I guess racks, can do very, very well is we want to get clear on the scope. And what I've seen poor scopes and I've seen well done scopes. And I believe that a minimum scopes for principal hazards, any, let's say, single fatality, multi-fatality risks, should cover for a number of aspects. And this will then go and live in the scope and the hazard description for that. Yes. So sorry, just going backwards, just caught myself up. What I explain to people in our critical risk management masterclass is thinking through that hazard description. What good looks like in my mind is, let's say anyone could come and read the PHMP They say, hey, welcome to my site, blah, blah, blah. Here is, this is about geotechnical failure. Let me tell you about what geotechnical failure means for our business. And it'll talk about where it applies, how long it's been around, what's the magnitude of it, what are we uncertain about, any legislative requirements. We'll talk about the processes and activities that we do to either manage or that could impact on geotechnical risk. It talks about all of that and contextualizes the risk for our business. And then it then says, okay, now read the next section where I tell you how we manage this risk that I've just described to you. So that's what that note on hazard descriptions means. Hopefully that makes sense. Happy to have a convo about that. Okay, self-assessment ratings. So back on one scale of 1 to 10, and those that aren't doing PHMPs, then obviously you don't have to answer this, but where's your organization live in the fact that one, risk assessment feed into the PHMP content? They're on the same cycle. The content is congruent. Where do you live on a scale of 1 to 10? Or where's your organization? 10 is gold standard, all good, nothing to see here. And 1 is, we've got a fair bit to do. Let's see who we got. So we've still got about 18 people on the line. So let's go. Mick's gone first. Thank you, Mick. Who else? Tamara, 2 to 3. No, you've got plans in place. Sharon, you've got a 5. All right, middle of the road. Who else we got? Justin's a 6. Thanks, mate. Vincent, Tanya, Subas, Sarah, Sapna. Where are you guys? Bob, 2 to 3. Thanks, mate. Didn't you do 2 to 3 last time? Anyway, you can put in multiple. Who else we got here? Glenn, Colin, what do you guys and girls think? Caesar, haven't heard from you. I'm not sure if you might have PHMPs, they mightn't be relevant. All right, I'll keep an eye on the chat there, but really keen to hear. So obviously, what we've just talked about there is the impacts if our PHMPs aren't based on risk assessments. That's obviously foundation 1. I expanded on that a little bit, said, look, bow ties are probably the ideal tool. Certainly starting to think about critical controls and critical control failure modes and them flowing over into PHMP as well. And we did that alignment table where we saw how there's a direct 1-for-1, and we want to have things in the same review cycle as well. So certainly that's the learning there, fed by risk assessments. Again, not saying bow tie is the only way, but to me, it's a more effective way to do it. And we must have congruency in the content. Okay, all right, so the last idea here. So how do we get to a right-sized PHMP? And I've got to be careful with this language because right size doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, it's 30 pages, therefore it needs to be 5 pages. Right sizing means, well, what is the right size of PHMP? What's the right amount of content based on your business, the risk, the context where it is, the magnitude of it and everything like that. So how do I do it? So this is now a question back to yourselves, and even people non-mining could have a go at this. Based on what we've discussed, and let's say your business has a non-right size PHMP, what could be some things that you could do to start on that right sizing journey? What will be some tactical things that you would look to do? Who wants to go first? You can give me one thing, you can give me a few things. This is where we're sort of using what we just talked about to apply it, or theoretically apply it. So give us 30 seconds to throw something out there. Tamara, clean out the how and only link by narrative. That would be pretty useful. Thanks, Tamara. Margot, consult the audience for understanding. Yes, we certainly want to do a validation. Pat, take out any explanation of any why we do things. Just keep it the what. Yeah, that's it. Gee, I've seen so many. That's a good point, mate. Sharon, yeah, refer to the documents where the how is. Absolutely. And remove any duplication. Hopefully there's no conflicts. Justin, get your structure correct so that the PHMP is only why and other documents cover the why. You said why twice, mate, but I'm feeling what you're putting out there. There. I think we're aligned. How? Yes, awesome. Anyone else have some other ideas or suggestions on how you could, right size these PHMPs? Anything else come to mind? There's some good ones. Okay, so we've covered some structural things. So yeah, the structure of the PHMP in and of itself. Sometimes I ask organisations who give me this thing. I say, okay, where did that framework or template come from? And oftentimes, and this might be similar to what you've seen, it's just been something we've just repeated down the line, year upon year, and it's never been challenged. So I mentioned there's that guidance note from New South Wales. I think that there's kind of some minimum standard stuff, but anything doesn't need to be in there, like the why. Unless you don't need to talk about what critical risk management is. Take that out. You've got that talked about somewhere else. Yeah. So look at the structure. Apply the center of the octopus. So I think Sharon and Tamara, you guys already identified that. Can we just take out the how stuff? And interestingly, you've got to be careful with that because sometimes if you take out that how mightn't be written in let's call it the reference document, or even worse, it might conflict, and then you've got to go through a process to work out, well, what are we actually going to agree is how we do that thing. We talked about, relay anyhow to the SHMS. Ensure the hazard description includes scoping elements. So this is well. So this could actually result in additional information coming into the PHMP if the scoping just hasn't been there. We haven't been clear on contextualizing the hazard. There's actually an increase. So this is again the right sizing, not just based on volume, but in terms of the value content. Glenn, company industry standards on yeah, that's right. If you've got any internal or industry standards, certainly be looking at that as well. All right, and place any key information that must be included in PHP, but not of critical importance in appendices. So this is one that we've done a few times. So let's say the geotechnical is probably the classic. If you might have lots of maps or images or charts or really detailed reports, that could actually be in the appendix, and it might just be a summary, the hazard description where we say this is a summary of the hazard. To a certain degree. If you want more information, see Appendix 2 or C or B or whatever, and it's down there. So we're not then just clogging up the first 8 pages or something like that with all of that really, really detailed technical information. Same as copies of the Bowtie table, or if we put it into a chart, or if we put it into a table, we just throw that down the reference. And then when we talk about in the the risk assessment thing, we'll say, yep, we completed a Bowtie, which identified a number of causes and consequences. For a summary of the Bowtie outcomes, please see Appendix B or C. And then we just push people down there. So we can sort of just rejig it around as well. And there's probably a few other things that people on the line have already done that I haven't put on the slide. So if we think about then, if you wave your magic wand, did the restructure, and we applied some of these principles, who's likely going to be the type of reader? If we think about level within the organization or maybe outside of the organization, what might be the type of people or roles that would be reading the PHMP? Want to guess? Throw something in the chat. Give us 10 seconds. Any organization has lots of different roles. So Justin, the risk owner. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? So imagine Tamara, risk owner, coal mine worker who conduct the how. Yeah, well, that's an interesting one, which I might come back to. SAP operational managers, thank you. Sharon, superintendent, supervisor. Yeah, so it's an interesting idea. Thanks, Pat. If the anyone responsible for managing controls, thanks, Mick. Mick Hammond, risk. Sorry, thanks, Glenn. Risk owners, risk implementers, control owners, Mick, thank you. Bob, management, SSMEs. So if we think about what we said is if the PHMP only covers what and doesn't cover the how, then does a frontline worker, what type of information is a frontline worker interested in up to a certain level? Let's say supervisor and I don't know, maybe superintendent. They're primarily, on average, interested in the how, aren't they? They're not really interested in, well, what are the parent critical controls and the scenarios? Like, well, tell me what to do. Or I want to be clear, what do I need to do? When do I need to do it? And what do I need to do if that thing's not working or that's in place? So we start to then be able to, put the how information at the right level in the operational document that suits the people that need to read it. Then we're leaving the what is really for that layers above, isn't it? So Justin, you mentioned a good one about the risk owner. I think a few other people mentioned that. So imagine if you came into a new, I don't know, mine site and you were the, I don't know, production manager, and it said, congratulations, you now own these 5 risks. You'd be like, oh, okay, how do I get my head around this? If you had a right size PHMP set up for those 5 things, you could come in, read the what, and then you could link through to the how, and you can see how it all fits together. And that would be, well, in my view, pretty useful. Same thing for a regulator, where they say, oh, I'm concerned about how you're managing, using Sharon's term from their site, vehicle interaction. Or show me how you're adequately managing the risk of vehicle interaction. Okay, here's our PHMP. Read this. Instead of you giving them 1,000 documents, just read this, start here, and then let me know what you want to see in further detail. So that's my 2 cents on that. So this kind of brings it all together now. So we're thinking about applying those things previously. If you could give your PHMPs a right size rating out of 10, again, right sizing doesn't necessarily mean that we've taken away all the content. Where would your organization live on this? Sharon's a 6, Justin's a 6. Okay, I think you guys have been consistent around there. There's all of these things, including the risk assessment process, the center of the octopus. Mix of 7, doing pretty well. Tamara 5, yep. So that's a bit of an elevation for some of the other scores there, Tamara. Who else? Glenn's a 4. Vincent, Tanya, and Subas. You guys have any inputs? Leslie, I guess you're non-mining. Who else got there? Colin. All right, I'll keep an eye on that. All right, so I think we're getting the picture now about right sizing, which is a aggregation of some of those ideas and themes that I've mentioned previously. Okay, so this is now one that everyone can answer. So after everything we've just gone through, what's a key takeaway, key idea, a key aha moment, a key, oh, look, if we do that, that's really going to move the needle. What do people have to think here? I'll give everyone, let's say 20 seconds. Just think about what we've gone through very, very quickly. What's where are we at? Mick, focus on the what, not the how. Yeah, I like that. Margo, use of the right risk tools. Yeah, 100%. Tomorrow, just the what in the PHMP. Yep, Satin to keep it simple. Yep. What else? Some good ones. Yeah, Colin, 100%. Sure, right size. Thanks, mate. Who else? Justin, appendices, additional information. Yeah, if that's an easy thing you can do, then that's great. That's some good low-hanging fruit. Leslie, structured and efficient. Well, let's just move through. Yeah, right size. Bob, revisit commonality between PHPs and critical. Yes, Sharon, true. What is in the PHP? Yes, 100%. Sharon, thanks. Glenn, yes. Focus on the context of control and basic, and that's it. Yeah, yeah, certainly. I'm sure, mate, from your background, you've probably seen some fairly large PHMPs. Yes, Pat needs to be integrated, 100%. That's awesome. Okay, so we'll move to the wrap up bit. Again, if my internet's a bit scratchy, I apologize. So look, clearly you showed up today. There's been some challenges. You're looking for opportunities for improvement. Maybe you do a lot of work in PHMPs. Maybe you're curious about PHMPs. I think we all agree they always can be improved. What we know, and a few people said, it's the what, not the how. I think center of the octopus, there's probably a better term. That's what I'm using. There is a strong relationship with a risk assessment. We can't have them sitting by themselves, and they are congruent in what they have. And bow ties are very helpful with that. And right sizing is the combination of some of those things we mentioned before. So look, how do you get there? PVC me talk about this. You can do the trial and error, try different templates, do it slow or fast. Or I said at the start, what you could do to get some more information. What I'm doing, it's actually only for 5 people or 5 organizations. Happy to do a free PHMP review. So this is really for those that, you think, oh, look, I wouldn't mind a second check on our PHMPs, or look, we're at the start of our journey. It needs to change. Certainly, if you've got these big ones, well, how do I unwind this and not introduce risk to the business? Or you're just open to learning. It's like, we've got some stuff. Yeah, keen to see what else we could do. That's who it's for. And ultimately, again, I'd normally do a lot of work in critical risk on the risk assessment side of things, but our SHMS needs to be pretty tight. We can't have gaps all over the place, and it helps me and helps us achieve our mission as well. And how it works, pretty easy. You just email me your worst, let's say non-right size, most non-right size PHMP as opposed to worst. We do a review, have a 15-minute chat, and then you're on your way. That's pretty much as hard as it is. And what's the benefits there? You don't have to take a 5-year journey to get to right size. You can use all of the experience base that we have and potentially some of our libraries. We might have example PHMP for some risks that you guys might be battling with. And you don't need to outsource, pay lots of money. And, like Justin said, well, I think you've already got that one, that low-hanging fruit. What could you tactically do? That's the benefit of that. So I'll throw my email in the chat. But I'm not doing it for lots and lots of people because I've got lots of clients to help. But we'll certainly do it for 5 people. So if you're interested, just send me an email, send me the PHMP, and we'll get it happening. I've actually got a little bit of time at home before I'm traveling again. All right, so before we get into questions, I think you guys know where we are. We do lots of stuff. So let's get questions going. So there's 2 parts here. One, if you have a burning question, throw it in the chat now, and we can talk about it. If you're just happy to wait and listen to questions, then I haven't asked this previously, but if you think you got value out of this, hey, I'd love you to leave a Google review for us because we're trying our hardest to get the word out, but the world's a pretty big place. So I'll give time for questions now. So throw it in the chat. And while we're waiting for that, I'm just going to go back up, right up the start and see some of the questions that were talked during the intro. Just give me a section there. Transitioning from Bowtie to PHMP. So Tamara, that was your question. Maybe you can just answer that in the chat. Do you think we have addressed that now when I went through that table where we had the Bowtie and sort of how it marries up with the PHMP? If you can just put that in the chat just to confirm, yes, no, then I'll do that. For everyone else, please, hopefully you're beavering away on a question, or you might be starting, leave us a review. That would be awesome. Or you might be sending me an email with your non-right size PHMP. So there's no one else in the chat yet. So I'm just going to go up to the second question that was up there. Strategic. Let me just have a look. No, we answered all the ones at the start. Thank you. Just going to scroll down to the bottom again. Please, if you've got a question, throw it in there. Was there a PowerPoint on the screen? Maybe I missed it. Hopefully everyone else saw a PowerPoint. Gee, I hope not. I hope I've just been talking to the camera. Yeah, hopefully. I'll come back to the one, Glenn. I was there. Thanks, Pat. Gosh, you just gave me a heart attack, Glenn. All right, I'm just going to go back to some of these questions here. Oh, someone's got a new message. Yes, thank you, Tamara. Glad that we answered that and sorted that out. Sometimes, yeah, you got to actually unpack it to see how it aligns. Now, there was a question in the middle. Just looking there. I can't remember. I think Margot, you might have asked a question. I think I said I'd come back to it, but I've got so much in the chat. All right, so here we go. So we've got a question from Margot. Could you use a code of practice to build a PHMP? That's a really good question, and that same scenario applies to any industry, doesn't it? Where we might have a code of practice or a guidance note or a recognized standard or things like that. So you've got those things circulating around. What's their bearing on the PHMP? Yeah, so I agree. So if we think about, there's a few things that come to my mind there. So generally, a code of practice is a list of controls, isn't it, or a control strategies. Let's say the falling from height or the code of practice for working at heights. It just lists out here's all the things, the control things you should have in place to manage that risk, and then we can take from that what we will. We might use it as a reference source. So out of that code of practice, if we think through the lens of a PHMP, if a PHMP is about the what, then maybe there isn't a lot of information in the code of practice that might live in the PHMP, which says what we will do. There might be a parent statement that says, look, and through the implementation and application of our controls, we'll comply with these particular external requirements. So potentially more of the code of practice information is in the how documents. So, I might have my working at heights management plan. Oh, looks like my video is frozen. Hopefully it's popping back for you guys. I'll turn it on and off. Just bear with me. Stop video. Start video. All right. So the how information from the code of practice would likely flow into the how documents within our safety and health management system. So our procedures, work instructions, maybe SOPs and that sort of level. So hopefully we talked about that. Is a PHMP similar flavor to a safe work method statement in high-risk construction? So Leslie, that was asked early on, probably halfway. Maybe after we saw the document hierarchy, you can see where a PHMP lives in relation to a safe work instruction. So I'll wait for you, mate, to jump back in the chat and say, do you think that's been resolved or there's still a question there? If there's still a question there, happy to look back to it. All right, and then we've got a question. Justin, our organisation has identified critical risks and critical controls via Bowtie, but site only has a few PHMPs. We cover critical controls in other documents. Do they have to live in the PHMP? Yeah, that's a great question. Our organisation has identified critical risks and critical controls via Bowtie. The site only has a few PHMPs. We cover critical controls in other documents. Do they have to live in PHMPs? No, I guess they don't have to. I think if we follow this, I won't go back to the document hierarchy. To me, the PHMP talks about what we're going to do. Here's our critical controls that are going to manage this overall, and therefore we don't have to put in our how documents the names of critical controls because we've put it up here. Unless for some reason we want to put critical controls in our how documents. As we know, one of the risks is the more places we put a critical control, if we then change the critical control or rename it, then the more places we've got to go and change it. So I think in the absence of a PHMP that you could put it at, another way to do it, which I talk about another one of our seminars, is you might have a critical control register. Like you have a confined space register, we have the name of the critical control, what's the risk for, and who's the owner of the critical control. And then you can just point all the different documents to that type thing. Yeah, I'll come back to Glenn. So look, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to wrap up. I'll happily stay on the line if people want to keep asking some questions, but it's conscious for everyone else. So thank you for those who've joined. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you for your interaction. Once we've done the recording, then we will send out a link where you can get a copy of the recording, copy of the slides, and because I'm a nice guy, an example of a PHMP template that we've used. So again, I'm just saying it's an example, may not be the one, but it's not a bad starting point if you don't have one. So I'll let you go. Those who want to stay around, just hang on the line, and we'll chat to you again shortly. I think everyone knows where to find me. So thank you, those. And then I'll just let everyone wander off. Have a great day. And for those that are still on the line, then depending on how many people are left, we might just have a voice chat or a video chat as opposed to via text.